everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Fantasy Football Expo podcast. I'm your host, Bob Lung, with the Fantasy Football Expo. And I have a very special guest with me this week. One of the OGs, and I mean OG as in original everything. This guy has done it all. He's been here from the beginning with not only me, but just, fantasy-wise, been around for a while. Everybody knows him and loves him. This is Gary Davenport of everything. Bleacher Report, IDP Sharks. It'd be easier just to make a list of who Gary doesn't do something for. He's so involved in the community. Gary, welcome. Always good to have you here, my brother.
Oh, glad to be here. Given that I hit you up on Twitter and said, wait, there's a Fantasy Football Expo podcast and I haven't been invited yet. That's the story of my career, Bob, is I have never been shy about saying,
Hey, can I be again? No, trust me, I've done that a lot too in my days. Somebody like, I got this new podcast. Like, hey, you need a guest? Yeah.
Right.
So we're excited to put together this Expo podcast series. Just wanted to get and just interview a lot of the folks that either, going to be an exhibitor, have been exhibitors, have been attendees. But this is a special one tonight because we're going to talk a lot about the beginnings of a lot of things, how you and I are in there together. But let's go way back to the beginning, and let's go back to when you started playing fantasy football. What brought you into this fantasy football world? What got you involved? How'd you get started? In what year was that? For those of us who are all going to, a lot of us, not me, but a lot of the folks out there going to go, I wasn't even born yet.
Hasn't been that long. It's been a little while. My first league was 2004 because, and you're from Northern Ohio. The Browns left in 95. Yeah. We didn't get them back until 99. It was a rough stretch. Yeah. And then those first few years of the new Browns, an even rougher stretch. So it's not to say I didn't still love football, but I kind of drifted away from the sport a little bit. And my sister's business partner was starting a fantasy league, and he asked me if I wanted to hop in, $50 a team, yada, yada, yada. So because there's a $400 prize, and I like money.
Sure, yeah. Right.
And I start researching a little bit, get into fantasy football. My first pick, LaDainian Tomlinson.
Beautiful.
Second pick, Sean Alexander made it all the way back around to me because everyone went quarterback crazy.
Right.
Third pick, Jeff Garcia. That's where the new in me came out, and I won that league that first year
because of those running backs.
Hooked ever since. Yeah, and I'm still to this day. I'm still running back.
Yeah, right. Even though the trend is starting to go a little away from that, as we're starting to see. Not that means you change, but it certainly means that the folks are drafting a lot of wide receivers. So you might get a lot of good running backs in the first couple of rounds based on what I've seen in some of these early mock drafts that I've been involved with and I've seen. So 2004, so obviously you got started in that. What point did you get into now writing about it? Or did you get hooked on IDP first, or did you start writing about football, fantasy football, and where did you kind of start that world that you've been a big part of for now many years?
Back in the day, and you probably remember it, the Fantasy Football Cafe.
Okay.
I used to hang out there on the message boards, met great people there, got into a bunch more leagues, dabbled in IDP a little bit. About, I guess it would have been 2007, I met Scott Fish on the cafe.
There you go.
And we became friends. And we both had been dabbling a little bit with writing some stuff for Cafe, which we weren't being paid for it. And 2009, he came to me and said, hey, if we're not going to get paid for this, why don't we just do our own thing? And that fall, we started Fantasy Football Oasis. And I was there for about 3 years. And then I started the idea of actually making money. Emo Catholic is the one that gave me the idea I could actually make money. Because in 2010, he reached out to me about doing an IDP article for one of the magazines. And I was, wait a second, people will pay me money for this? Actual money? Exactly. And then late 2010, New Year's Eve, my youngest brother passed away.
Right.
And by 2011, I was working a job that I hated, and I just didn't want to do it anymore. So in 2011, I decided, you know what? I'm just going to jump in with both feet and see if there's any way I can turn this from a hobby into something more than that. And I was fortunate enough that year. I latched on with Fantasy Sharks. I latched on with Bleacher Report.
Right.
And, those first few years were pretty lean. But as you build a little momentum and, branch out to a few other outlets, and like I shamelessly self-promote myself anywhere and everywhere and the worst anyone can tell you is no. And I've been told no more than one. I've been told no and then had people circle back 2 or 3 years later and want me to write for them.
Yeah.
So I don't know, it was probably about 2015 by the time I was actually making decent money. And now, I'm fortunate enough and I am grateful beyond words to be able to write full time, because it's changed my life. It really has. I love what I do. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many people in the fantasy football community are so awesome. We're all doing something we want to do.
Right.
It's not like, a 9 to 5, no disrespect to the people who go out there and bust their humps 9 to 5. I do that. But a lot of them do it at jobs that, frankly, if you gave them the chance to quit, they would in a heartbeat. We're all doing something we love, and it shows.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I remember, and I don't remember how many years ago, but you had like the 1 millionth view or 1 million something. And I'm like, that's just amazing to me. And I know that was a while ago too, but
we go back
on Bleacher Report.
I can't even remember how far back we go, Bob. It's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been quite a while for sure. Like I said, I started writing my stuff in 2002 for Roto Junkie, which was, again, bulletin board site, kind of like your Fantasy Cafe. A lot of great people were there as well. Todd Zola, Paul Sporer. But anyway, a lot of folks there. That's where I met Ron Chandler for the first time, was online there. So, a lot of folks, and I was doing football. It was mostly a baseball site. But there's a lot of support, and still know those guys quite a bit from that day. But
I have never played in a fantasy baseball league.
It's all right. It takes
I like baseball. I hear it, especially the day. I can't imagine how people play in a daily fantasy baseball league, setting your lineup and everything 162 times. My head would explode, because I'm the type of person who second guesses every lineup decision. And are not sure I want that for my RB2. Yeah. I'd be looking at my shortstop, and by June I'd melt down completely.
Yeah, and when football and baseball collide, that's what it was always fun, because it's like, it's something to do. Now, of course, this is long before I was writing a football guide, January through April, but I was in leagues. This is back in the mid 90s, because Indians were super good at that point. My cousins and uncles and all of them wanted to do fantasy baseball, so I ran the league for them and took care of everything. And it was fun, because I won 7 out of the 10 years, because it was an auction league, and they would grossly overpay for Albert Bell and Jim Thome and Kenny Lofton. And I would just buy guys like, Ichiro Suzuki for like $2, because these people had blown their wads on all the Indians players. And I was just grabbing all the great other players, and I was killing them every year.
Those mid-90s Cleveland teams were such a joy to watch. I know we didn't get nothing out of it. We didn't get a championship. But man, that lineup, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was scary. But all right, so let's kind of move forward now. So you got into the IDP world, and you're now kind of that guy. Everybody knows you as kind of the IDP. I think we nicknamed you the Godfather of IDP. That's what you're best at. And so, let's kind of take a step towards 2018. The creation of, our shirts are on, the Kings Classic. He's got the original 2018. I got last year's 2022. I came up with, I'd come up with the idea many years before that. Always thought that there should be a best of best fantasy football competition at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And the funny thing is I thought about it, and being a little bit in fantasy baseball, I had followed things like the Tout Wars and Labor, which was the best of the best in baseball. And remember the February or March of 2018, and I'm listening to Sirius XM, and they're having one of the drafts, Tout Wars or Labor, and it was in the Staten Island AAA Yankees locker room, and they had all the drafts set up there. That everybody had their names on the lockers, so they feel like they're part. And I just thought that sounded so cool. And that's when I reached out to Mike Clay and said, Mike, look, baseball has this best of best. They're doing it at the, AAA Yankees locker room. What a great thing. I said, why don't we do a best of best football? We'll do it at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'll put it all together. And, if you guys come, everybody else will come with you. And they're all, and so he got a hold of Brad. Brad had say kind of a similar idea, and all came together. And that was our first Kings Classic in 2018. Gary, you obviously were there. You were certainly one of the top people on my list to make sure we got in the top, 24 guys that year of people that I recognize as being some of the best in it. So talk about that experience from your perspective when, this all came together and you got to do that draft at the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2018.
Yeah, I'd forgotten we were only 12 teams back then.
Yeah, it was 12 teams each. Yeah, right.
It's such an honor to be invited. And like you said, the moment I heard, wait, they're going to draft where? At the what? And lived in Ohio most of my life, had never been to the Pro Football Hall of Fame before 2008.
Oh, wow. That's I didn't realize.
I had to be there. So when Tony Holm at Fantasy Sharks was like, hey, do you want to rep Fantasy Sharks? Yeah, of course. I mean, I wish I'd done better, but I wish I'd done better in every Kings Classic since then.
Yeah.
So, but it was just awesome to get everyone together. And, after the draft, we went out and
BW3s, yeah.
Right, took over Buffalo Wild Wings.
Yeah.
Made regulars frightened. But it was great. And then, the next year we did it again. And it's just become such a – and granted, now it's grown into the Expo, but it's just something I look forward to every year because it's an opportunity to – not only is it an opportunity to compete at fantasy football, it's an opportunity to get to see a lot of friends that you don't get to see face-to-face a lot. Mm-hmm. And I've made a lot of new friends. I mean, I'm now consider myself pretty good friends with just about everyone in the Blanda division. And a lot of those guys I didn't really know before that day, like, Doug Orth. And I'd interacted a little bit with Darren Armani, but not a lot. Brian Drake, all those guys.
Right.
And now, I talk to them all the time. Doug and I are constantly hurling insults at one another back and forth on social media.
Right. I gotcha. So we get that started. Like you said, that led into 2019 when the Expo kind of came about. It was quite a lot of people still when I've been interviewing them, especially those that were there for the first time in 2019 for the Expo. And we all got together at BW3 and all of a sudden the folks that, that are our folks, we call them the RB2s, got to meet the RB1s, the Mike Clays, the Brad Evans, Marcus Grant, Bob Harris, Dave Richards, Andy Behrens. They were all there. And I remember just some of the people who were just in awe and said, and even told me, like, Bob, it was so amazing. I got to talk to Mike Clay, and he came on my podcast. Like, hey, can you imagine Mike Clay came on my podcast? I never even thought of asking him, and now, like, he's one of us. And I'm like, yeah, they're all one of us. But people finally got to realize that how humble they are, how zero egos. It's just we're all in this together. Again, you were there as well. Talk about that evening, because that was kind of the coming together, which – started off our Expo and now is, now becoming something that's even bigger, but we're just including more people. It's the same family, right?
That was the first time I'd seen Mike Clay since 2015 in Vegas. He beat me. First time I was a finalist for an FS Fantasy Sports Writers Association award. Clay beat me. So he's walking through, I'm sitting having a drink with Jeff Ratcliffe, Ross Miles, and a Jim McCormick from ESPN. And Clay walks into the bar, and I yelled across the bar at him like William Shatner in Star Trek II, like Khan. I yelled Clay at the top of my lungs. So it was great to see Mike again. I had never met Bob before that first Expo, not face to face. I mean, we had talked and talked.
Sure, right. Oh, yeah.
And that's I know that we're supposed to be, something in the industry, but all of us, we're just regular guys.
Right. Exactly.
To a man. We're not the kind of people you can't just walk up to at a restaurant and say, oh my. Every year at the Expo, someone will tap me on the shoulder and I'll turn around and they'll be like, you're Gary Davenport. And I'm like, yeah. And I don't know whether they're going to hand me a present, like it's a process server or something.
You're right.
And it just never ceases to, and that's another thing. It just goes back to how great the community is.
Yeah.
Whether you're a bigger name or a up and comer or someone who's just looking to break in. And that's one of the great things about the Expo is that it mixes them all together, and you can just go up to these people and say, hi, I'm so-and-so, big fan of your work. And it's, no one's going to blow you off. Everyone's going to go, oh, really? It's good to meet you. And they'll remember you. They really will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of the folks also, and I know that's what I've said to many people who have talked to me, whether it's a podcast or interview or even there, is, I keep reminding them, look, you, me, Bob Harris, Mike Clay, we all started at the same spot. We all had an idea. We all thought that we were smarter than, we all thought we had something to bring, and we just did it, and we worked hard, and we kept toiling through. I mean, like I said, I've been writing for over 20 years. You've been almost 20 years. I laughed the one time when I think it was 2018. Well, it was early 2019. And somebody asked me after the Consistency Guide won the award for best publication that year. And it was only the second year I'd been nominated. And so I was kind of caught off guard. And I don't remember who it was interviewed me. And they said, well, talk about your overnight success, because, you've only been nominated for this once. And now, in your second year, you win. And I was like, well, it only took 18 years for the overnight success to kick in. But that's it. It's just, if you just don't force it and you just work hard and keep toiling and keep grinding and meet folks at this expo and network and invite people on your podcast, go on their podcast, over time, the cream will rise to the top, and they will get recognized, and they will get hired to do things. And, but you got to go at your pace. So, not everybody has the cunyans like you did to just go, I'm done, and I'm going to go into this full bore, and here we go. It's easier said than done, but, you certainly have proven that you could do it. But it wasn't an overnight success by any stretch, was it?
No. And some days it's better to be lucky than I was blessed.
Yeah.
I'd already met guys like Bob and Emil and Tony Holm, and I already knew some people, and they in turn introduced me to some other people. I can't imagine, had the Expo existed back then, I was still living in Arizona, I'd have been on a plane, because if you're an aspiring fantasy football content creator, I can't imagine a better place to be than at the Expo, because all the people you aspire to be are going to be there. Right. All the people who hand out those gigs that you want are going to be there.
Right.
It's a fantastic opportunity to network and just put yourself out there. And, people, like I said, people will remember you. I mean, I'm never going to forget Nate Markham, because his wife won't ever let me.
That's a good point.
I had just got there. I just got to the DoubleTree. Had got checked in, come back down to the bar, sit down, go relax, have a beverage, and I get that, you're Gary Davenport. I'm like, yeah. Sign this. I'm like, what?
Sign this?
Yeah, it was the NBC, well, then it was still Roto World. Okay. Their fantasy football magazine, and I guess she'd been reading it on the plane.
Oh, and you were in it.
And then she dragged Nate and Jorge over and introduced them, and
too funny.
I think that might be
now you guys are good friends.
Oh yeah, I think that might be my only autograph, except for my brother always used to want me to sign, like every magazine I would give him, he wanted me to autograph for some reason.
Yeah, I've done a few of them for mine. I get it, but I was kind of like, okay, sure,
this isn't going to be worth anything. Just,
yeah. I hope this is not your retirement investment, because
the sticker price on the front of that magazine is as much as this is ever going to be worth.
Yeah. So I think it's a perfect lead in here. We're talking about all of this. And so, Gary, we kind of talked about this a little bit last year. We finally put it in place. The big announcement coming up for 2023 is that we're going to have a Kings Classic IDP first annual draft at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, just like we do all the other ones. And Gary, you have the honor of basically putting this together. You've got your 14 folks picked. Talk about the Kings Classic IDP competition that will be happening this year at the Expo weekend at the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Well, since we already had, the Blanda division, in the Jim Brown division, of course.
Sure.
Picture Jim Brown right back there. Greatest football player to ever live.
Mm-hmm.
I figured, we had to go old school defensive all-timer. So it's going to be the Dick Butkus division.
Perfect.
Also, a bit of an homage to our good friend Mike Taglieri, who I'm
great.
sure would be pleased by that.
Yeah.
14 teams, which I don't know if I'm in a 14-team IDP league, so that's going to be different.
Right.
I've spent the last 2 or 3 weeks tinkering with the scoring because not only do I want the IDPs to score every bit as much as the offensive guys, I want to kind of balance out the positions to where you have more roster options. Actually, the IDPs score a little bit more than the offensive because I just use the offensive scoring from King's Classic.
All right, cool.
And then the defensive scoring, I started from scratch. Got 14 great. We got Mike Wollert from 4 for 4. I took him from Blanda too, but that's okay because it's 2 openings for Blanda. So
we're going to still have a 4x4 for 4 is going to be Chris Allen. So.
Right. It's just an opportunity for someone else to step in.
Somebody else step in there. Yeah,
absolutely. John Norton from Football Guys, who's been doing IDP since the dawn of time. Iggy Gilbert, who was one of the people that I met last year, great guy.
Nate Cheatham from IDP Guys.
Yeah, he's helped set it up, and I think he's going to design a fancy dealie for the website. Jorge's going to be in it. Bob Miller, Joey Wright, and I know there's several names I'm leaving out. No,
that's right.
Thanks to you guys. It's going to be great. It's a murderer's row of guys who know their IDP, and I've tried to set up a scoring system that isn't exactly like anything we've ever played in before to kind of even things out. And I wanted to make it to where taking a defensive player, because normally in IDP leagues, you'll set up most of your offense, then you'll hit the defense. This one, I wanted to make it viable to where you could at least consider taking a defensive player essentially from the jump.
Wow.
There isn't going to be 2. There won't be 2 drafts. There won't be an auction and a snake.
Right.
An IDP auction would never end. We would be there. High school football would be played in the background as we're still trying to finish the draft. 34 rounds live at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It's been a long time since I've been this excited about a fantasy football league. I cannot wait. It's going to be awesome.
So 34 rounds. How many starters on offense and defense?
Offense is exactly the same as.
So you're going to do 3. You're going to do 3. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it ain't gonna, no one said it was going to be easy, Bob.
I'm glad I'm not in this. I'm out.
What about King's Classic has ever been easy?
No, that's right.
The draft is awesome, but it's a waking nightmare. Yeah. Especially the auction. You get sniped. Auction or snake. You get sniped so many times that you just become numb to it about halfway through. On defense, you have to start 3 defensive linemen. 1 has to be a tackle.
Okay.
You have to start 2 linebackers. You have to start 3 defensive backs. 1 has to be a cornerback. And then, again, 3 flex. So there's actually 1 more defensive starter than offensive starter.
Okay. All right.
21 starters. So the bench is going to be it's going to be a pretty short bench, but, that'll leave a little bit more on the waiver wire, make the fab bids every week a little more interesting.
Which we all know in our regular Kings Classic, there's nobody there week to week. If there is somebody, the fab money is just
right. If there is somebody, you might as well just throw every cent you have at them.
I remember last year somebody dropped Justin Fields like after week 2 or 3, and then I remember somebody, then he had his back-to-back good weeks, and I think Brad Evans spent all $100. He had $100. He spent all $100 on Fields. So it's like, okay. But yeah, so no, this is exciting stuff. We're very happy that you're in charge of this. The Godfather should be in charge of it as he is. And while I'll miss you in the Blanda division because I'm moving down this year because I got relegated.
Oh no!
Yeah, tough year. But Brian Drake's moving up, so
you know what? Blanda's a great group of guys.
To say, it's Marcus Grant, and like you said, there are a lot of great people in it.
Davenport. You know what? You can do me a favor though, since you're going to be there and I'm going to be in Butkus. Give Doug a slap in the back
Just
of the head.
I'll just sit beside him, just keep hitting him back ahead and say, Gary
He
told you to
deserves
do that.
He deserves it. He really does. He's a terrible
This
person.
is for Gary.
I just want to put it out there on social media and everywhere. Doug Orth, you're a terrible human being.
I got it. I'll have to we'll make sure we put that in our tweets when we put it out there. So, all right. Well, Gary, thank you so much for joining us. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you, at least on Twitter and stuff. And then just tell everybody that they need to come to the Expo, right?
Oh, absolutely. Just follow me on Twitter at IDP Sharks, because if I start rattling off all the places I work for, I'm always afraid I'll leave one out and they'll be mad at me.
I hear you.
And yes, absolutely. If you have considered and you're not sure about whether or not you should come to the Fantasy Football Expo, you will not regret it. It is a fantastic time. I'm staying an extra day this year. Normally, I would, once the Expo was over on Sunday, I'd go ahead and drive home. I'm going to go ahead and just chill out a little bit Sunday evening. I'm hoping we can get the Butkus guys all together that are staying and go out to dinner or something like that.
Right.
It's a fantastic weekend, and it's a great way to kind of bridge the gap between the off season, because, by then training camp, the preseason started, and to take a break and just relax and have fun before the regular season grind starts.
But also learn a lot too. For those who are not content creators, you're just a fan, you're watching this, come to learn, because again, you have all of these amazing names, all these people, all the different genres between IDP, and we have Devi, and we have, dynasties and, redrafts and just so many things, DFS, sports betting, it's all there this year. So don't miss this, regardless of what you're in from a fantasy perspective. And if not, just bring your friends, grab all the guys, grab all the girls, make a weekend out of it. It's a nice 3-4 day event.
Great time.
Pretty inexpensive from a perspective of, travel and, hotels, food. Canton, Ohio is not New York. It's not Vegas. It's not anything like that. So definitely not going to hit your wallet that hard as well. So check it out, thefantasyfootballexpo.com. Once again, for Gary Davenport, I'm Bob Lung. Thanks again to Gary. Really appreciate you having me, brother. And everybody else, check out next episodes where we'll be cranking them out all summer long. Thanks again. Talk to you soon. Hey, everybody. Do you want to continue to learn more about the Fantasy Football Expo? Well, then subscribe to our channel so you don't miss an episode. Expo registration is now open, so make sure you visit thefantasyfootballexpo.com to get your tickets now. And come and experience fantasy football's greatest weekend in Canton, Ohio this August 11th through the 13th.